Hello, I'm Matthew Pankins. I'm the director here at Stewart County Community College. I attend the school library. I'd like to welcome you to the Cooper Park room of Liberal Memorial Library for this week's Lecture in the Library session, which is this fall will be done in conjunction with the Way We Worked speaker series that is put on by the State Historical Society of Kansas and the Smithsonian Institution of Washington, D.C. In today's program, we're going to concentrate on education. In our panel today, we have three liberalites that their careers have been in the educational field here in Liberal. We have Bridget King, IRC teacher at MacArthur Elementary School here in Liberal. Shawna Evans, the principal at MacArthur Elementary School here in Liberal. And Toby Hale, who's the former director of what is now that Stewart County Community College Area Technical School. At the time, it was the Liberal Area Vocational School. So, and
okay.
That, I think,
without further ado, in the panel. Who wants to speak first? Who wants to go ahead and start it off? Shawna, why don't we start with you?
Okay, well, I can give a background of my own. Is that what you're
Yep.
Well, first of all, I was born and raised here in Liberal. I graduated from Liberal High School in '91. I left for a few years to attend K-State and came back with my education degree and taught 5th grade for 10 years. 5 were at McKinley Elementary, and they built the intermediate schools. And so I was transferred to Cottonwood Intermediate, taught 5 more years in 5th grade. And then I became principal at MacArthur, and this is my 7th year at MacArthur as principal.
And Toby?
Toby Hale was born near Liberal, not in Liberal, 38 miles southwest in the Oklahoma Panhandle. Attended Hardesty grade schools at Hardesty, Oklahoma, and came to Liberal in 1946 with my parents. Graduated from Liberal High School, actually in '52. That's a long story, but you're not interested in that. Incidentally, in fall 50, we had the first and only under-50 football season, and we don't want to forget that. I went to the service for 2 years after high school, and came back, attended Wichita State University, just Wichita University at the time, then finished up at Panhandle State. We talking about work. I had to make a living, but this time I had a wife and 2 little boys. So while I went to Panhandle, I was also working full-time in the evenings and night. And the work is tied through in all of my education and training. My last trip to college was 3 years before I retired. I finished up my 2nd master's degree in order to become the director of what was in Liberal Area Tech School. A lot of years in education. After retiring, for the first 10 years at Sub, when they were called, and so I got a lot of years in Liberal school system. I've worked in a lot of things over the years. Talking about working, I made a living while in Wichita as a deputy sheriff on the Wichita or Sedgwick County Sheriff Patrol. Came out here working in the oil field, and then I worked on and off through the oil field and truck driving and everything to get a hands-on summer job, except the summers I was in college. Wound up with 2 master's degrees and 1 bachelor's degree, and had a good life so far. I'm not through yet either.
All
everyone. I'm Bridget King. I too grew up in Liberal. So I lived in the house, same house for 40 years before I went off and left for college. I went to college at Oklahoma Christian University and came back to the area. I spent my first 5 years teaching in Hugoton. I just wanted to be in the area, and there weren't any openings in Liberal, so I just took one in Hugoton. And my husband and I kind of got tired of driving different ways to teach. He was teaching in Ulysses, and I was teaching in Hugoton. We lived in Hugoton, driving every day, and opportunity, 2 jobs came up in Liberal in '99. So I've been here in Liberal since '99 teaching, where I taught first grade, half-time my first year, and then went to MacArthur. I've been at MacArthur since 2000, I believe, except for 1 year, where I taught second grade for 2 years. And then thought I wanted out of special ed, got out of it for 2 years and realized, regular ed wasn't for me. I missed it too much. So I got back into special ed.
Was your intention to get 3 graduates from Liberal High School, or did that happen so?
Nope, it was definitely my intention. Basically wanted to find out, and I'll ask questions to sort of go this along. Growing up, how has things changed from you when you guys were all growing up and now going through the system, watching kids themselves? What did you see when you guys were growing up? Tell us some stories about growing up and going to school and what you've seen or what you thought. We can start. We'll start with Shawna and Bridget, and then Toby. How's that?
Oh, there's many aspects that have changed. I remember as a kindergartner, we went to school and we had naps and we had snacks and we had recess, and we learned our letters through our letter books, and that was my kindergarten experience. And now I look at our kindergartners, and there is no time for a nap, and there is no time for a snack. They're still there half a day, and there is so many requirements, and the rigor has made huge difference between when I was a kid till now. They are leaving kindergarten either reading or ready to read. There's just such a big difference. I know, state standards weren't around, they were limited, and now everything is based on state standards, which is followed up with, instruction towards the assessment. The assessment is given. Accreditation is based on assessment scores. There's just so many things that, have been designed around assessments anymore. Our kindergartners now, they take computerized assessment 3 times a year. And the first time is in September. We put them on a little computer, and they're asked questions, and then their instruction is based on their assessments they're given. It's so much different than when I was a kid. Of course, technology, there's a world of difference in technology. Technology, whenever we were in school, it was a CD player, not even CD player, tape player. Record player, yes. We may have watched, I don't know, we even watched a movie. Yes. I mean, it's just, and now, I wished I would have brought it. I didn't have time to prepare for it, but the technology we do now, it's interactive. They have what's called a Mimeo that suction cups to a wall, and it turns that wall into an interactive whiteboard. And students can manipulate simulation of money, and they can drag the money around, or they can use clocks, or they can, it's a completely different approach to teaching. The teachers have write pads and class pads that they, that's the students, that's where they're at in their lives. We've got to keep up with our kids, so we use a lot of technology in the classrooms. Standards, as I mentioned before, standards were developed to give a guideline for teachers to teach, and along the way it's turned into here are the tested standards, and here are the expectations that our students have to have, which is a good thing. But there's so many things that are just based on assessments in the end. Gosh, of course, we had art. Art was a big thing on Fridays. Friday afternoons, we got to do an art project, and there wasn't a whole lot of history behind the art. It was just, this is a fun thing to do. I remember our teacher would come in with her art book that she had created in college, and we'd flip through and go, oh, I want to make this. Okay, let's,
That was a class in college.
It was a class. Yeah, it was.
How to teach art.
And now there's no time for art. I will say some teachers do fit in art if it can tie to a reading lesson or it can tie to a math lesson, but there's no time for that because of the stringent requirements that now the teachers and ultimately the students are having to face. Our day now, they have an hour of whole group instruction in reading. They have an hour of small group instruction in reading. They have 15 to 30 minutes of individualized reading where they're reading on their own level a book at their desk. And that's reading, and that's every day. Math is at least an hour, if not an hour and a half. Science and social studies get maybe 30 minutes to an hour. And PE is every day. PE, whenever we were kids, we may have had it every other day, we may have had it once a week, and it was for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and now it's 30 minutes instruction every single day. And so the day itself looks much different. And I go back to that, the stringent requirements and the rigor that has been placed. Of course, punishment. I remember, if kids got in trouble, if they were called out in the hallway, everyone was quiet in the classroom so we could hear that paddle. Because we knew it was coming, and it was the teacher giving it, or maybe the principal would be there, maybe they weren't. And now, we can still, corporal punishment is still allowed. There's lots of hoops that we must go through and lots of things that must happen before that all takes place. But I'll tell you, the State Department right now is telling us, ooh, we strongly recommend you not go that direction. But it's not allowed, but I can see us going that direction. So it rarely happens. And unfortunately, we see more and more parents that they don't want that to happen, and in fact, it's not their children's fault. So we have lots of things we have to battle if we think we're going to get swamped. I know at the high school, whenever I was in high school, we had students that would come. They had been drinking, or drugs were unless I was just oblivious to it. I can't say that we knew, I don't know that I knew anyone that really did drugs in high school. And now we have officers that are full-time, the high school and the middle schools, and they do locker checks on a regular basis. They bring in the drug dog. They walk the parking lot. That drug dog can find drugs in cars now on a regular basis. That's happening. It's a whole different world at the high school level even than it was whenever I was in high school. I know that of course, policies. You'll always have policies that you have to follow, but anymore, the policies we have policies for sexual harassment, racial harassment, bullying. We have policies on drug testing. We have policies on how you're going to handle, numerous situations that really were a non-issue whenever we were kids. Of course, we even have policies for pregnant students, for unwed mothers. We have policies for married students and how things are going to take place, and basically just protecting their rights. Something that I would have never dreamed would be in place. We go to lunches, and our lunches were, now I attended St. Anthony School from 3rd grade through 6th grade, and our lunches were cooked directly in our school, and then it was a big deal as a student that we got to help serve. We were servers as 6th graders. And so lunches now, they have strict regulations that have been placed on them of what they can and can't serve. There's a wellness policy that we have that states, teachers can't, or I shouldn't say can't, they shouldn't give candy as a reward. That's encouraging obesity. Parents are not allowed to bring homemade goodies of any kind, for birthday parties, Christmas parties. They have to be prepackaged. Everything is very spelled out in that aspect. I mentioned our kids are having PE every day, and part of that is because of the wellness policy that is in place. The PE teachers also have a bullying curriculum that they teach, the PE teachers as well as our counselors. Something that has been just recent in the past 3 or 4 years. And I can't say that bullying wasn't around when I was a kid, but we didn't have a curriculum for it. And so that's really become, a big thing and come to the forefront with all the violence and things that have happened in the schools over the years across our nation. Unfortunately, we find out that many times that's a result of bullying. And so we have a curriculum in place now that teaches students about bullying and bullying awareness. We now have class size targets that were placed by, we have a Board of Education policy that has a recommended target enrollment for each class, and depends on the grade level. In kindergarten, our target is 18 per class, and first grade's 19. But when I was a 5th grade teacher, my very first class I had 27. And across town, I was at McKinley, my husband taught at Washington, he taught 5th grade, he had 15 students, and I had 27. And so, there's obviously, class size makes a big difference in the instruction that can be delivered, but the policy now allowing for a cap size, it really is a target instead of a cap, because we've had to raise the cap. We've had to raise that target depending on the number that we've had enrolled. The past few years, because of the enrollment increasing, I know in 4th grade right now, the cap size, the target enrollment is 23, and they are up to, I think, 27 or 28 per class in every class, and that's 16 4th grade classes in town. And so because of that, they've had to raise that target enrollment. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a class for them. And so they're looking at having to hire additional teachers in the future so that we can absorb those students and not have such large classes. So that obviously has changed, which then we have 7 elementaries, and within those 7 elementaries, once we hit that target enrollment, then students that may live in the MacArthur district, if we are full in for instance, our 3rd grade classes this year, I had 22 in each class enrolled, plus I had 12 additional students that lived in MacArthur districts that I couldn't keep. We didn't have room. And so they now are attending another elementary in town. Whereas in kindergarten, I have 4 sections of kindergarten, and so we have students that come to us that may not live in our district, but we have the opening, and so those students are bused to us from across town or from a different district. And so, that it's a domino effect. We want to keep those class sizes down, but in return, we have those effects that we deal with. I think I've done enough talking, but that's just some of the things that I want to highlight that have changed since I was a kid.
Differences and the same. Some of the things I would probably compare would be, we still have the 7 elementary schools. I think those were around back in when we went to school. That hasn't changed. What has changed is that the elementary schools used to be K through 6. I remember, and now it's K through 3, all the elementary schools. And so I would say back in 2002, when did we start the intermediate schools?
12 years ago.
12 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
About 12 years ago, they built the intermediate schools where all the 4th through 6th graders go. And then I remember West has changed several times.
Mm-hmm.
Used to be 6th, 7th, and 8th. Then it was 7th and 8th. Then it was 7th, 8th, and 9th. And then it when I was there, I believe it was 7th, 8th, and 9th. If I remember right. And then the high school used to be 10th through 12th. So I remember that kind of changing back and forth. My oldest brother, which graduated in '84, I believe was the first graduating class that went all 4 years of the new high school. I remember him saying something about he was the first graduating class that went all 4 years. at the new high school. Now not so new.
Yeah.
No, I'm trying to think of things. You know, I remember the kindergarten experience that I was so excited to get to buy my little nap pad. So I could take my nap at kindergarten. I remember the letter. I still have my letter books.
Do you really?
I still have my letter books that I used in kindergarten. One thing I just remember being different is it was pretty much mostly desk instruction. It was at your desk, teacher up in front of the class teaching. You get your worksheets. The teacher gives her instruction. You do your work. You hand it in. You get your grade. It was pretty basic. Nowadays, it's more. It's got to be interactive. You got to get the kids up and moving around. The kids, get the kids out of their desks. Kids sat more in groups. Do a lot of small group activities with kids. I remember when I was in elementary school, and I don't believe this was part of the music program, my second grade teacher always did a play every year. And she put on a play every single year that we got to do. I remember the year I was in second grade, it was Snow White and Seven. And we don't see a lot of that anymore, like the kids doing any kind of acting or, the music. Kids still have music every other day. I'm trying to remember how it was when I was in school. I remember being in band in 5th grade, and that's still about the same. Kids can still enter band in the 5th grade. I'm trying to think of similarities and differences.
I'm sorry for interrupting the program, but since you're in the special needs area, there have been, I think, some big differences between special needs kids when you were in school.
Yeah, that's something else I was going to bring up too. Was I don't remember having special needs kids in my class. They were separate. I mean, they were taught in their own classroom. If they were to get any instruction, they went to that classroom to get their instruction, and they came back to our class. And nowadays it's so much inclusion, and we want the kids included. We want them in the classrooms. I specifically the last several years have concentrated, in autism, and that's certainly been something that's changed too. Feels maybe asked me to get a perspective of what the knowledge, back then would have been of it as opposed to now. I think back then, I'm not even sure it was a term that was known, other than Rain Man. Back in the 80s, and everybody thought, oh, they're all savants. They're all these really smart people with these really great skills. I looked up some interesting research that back in the 80s, one of the statements said that the autistic disorder, this was 1987, the autistic disorder is rare, occurring in fewer than 5 children per 10,000 births. That was in 1987, 5 births out of 10,000. The statistics now are even less than 1 in 100. I think the new research out is less than 1 in every 100. So that's huge change right there. Because the research has changed, the way that we're servicing the kids have changed, the way that we diagnose has changed. Just the whole, you wouldn't have even, seen the kids much in the community as you do now. In the classrooms, they're just all, kind of in classrooms together now. And I've seen it work well, and I've seen it work not so well. I'm an advocate of you put every child in an environment that's appropriate for them. If they belong in an inclusive classroom, if they belong with those kids all day, then that's where they need to be. But sometimes, I even get overwhelmed when I'm around people all day. If you have a kid that needs some kind of special instruction or instruction somewhere else, I think it's just whatever is appropriate for each kid. That's what I'm an advocate for. It doesn't always work that way, but that's what I think every kid's needs are different. You need to meet their needs where they're at. But as far as special needs, I think it's changed tremendously. Like I said, I don't even from when I started teaching, it has changed. Remember that special ed classroom used to be out in one of the portables at MacArthur, and all the kids would go out there to, receive their instruction. And now, I remember teaching in Hugoton when I first started teaching there, as opposed to when I started teaching in Liberal. Hugoton was probably even a little farther along than Liberal was, as far as inclusion. I think they started out calling it mainstreaming. At first it was mainstreaming, mainstream the kids, and then it turned into inclusion. But the big word when I went to college was mainstream. Kind of mainstream them in, and mainstreaming was, they might be in the classroom in the same building, but they're going to be getting their own instruction by a different teacher. And now it's more, we try to make it more inclusive for everybody. So, but the last thing I'm going to mention is I remember Mr. Maskus. I remember going to school, Mr. Maskus was there, and by golly, he ran that school by his rules, and you were going to follow his rules, and that was his school, and
that was the high school, right?
Yeah, he was a principal at the high school, and he ran that school. It was a tight ship. You didn't dare misbehave. You didn't dare, do it because you did not want to face Mr. Maskus. But I remember he was out and about a lot. I remember his presence. His presence was known among the kids, but it was feared to me. I don't know about all the other kids, but I was like, I didn't want to have to be in his office on a bad note. But I felt like he ran a pretty successful system, and a lot has changed. I think a lot of control has been taken away from administrators sometimes. That maybe they need to have a little more control of their schools and be able to do things, but that's just how things have changed. It's all got to work together. So, you probably know.
Well, yes. I think I could add a word or two to start off with. My first grade was here in Liberal in the Garfield building. I don't think that, and the big difference between your kindergarten and what they had in Liberal, they didn't have any. Nor in Harvest did. Kindergartens come and do things. I started school in 1937, and kindergarten didn't erupt till after World War II. So probably the biggest single change in grade school is that extra year to work with kids. The only thing I remember about first grade, I'm too old to remember that part about it. But I do remember one thing about Daryl's. She went to school at Garfield also, part of the old Garfield gang that came out of that school. And when I was there, I just remember one thing, that there were bars on the principal's office. Not out on the windows, but between in the building itself. I don't know if it's keep kids in or out. They were there. And I know that he took my pocket knife away from me, and I never did get it back. I knew where he was. And that's all I remember about Garfield School. I was there 1 year, and it's hard to see. One thing I remember about grade school at Hardesty was they had a rhythm band. I wanted to play the cymbals or something nice. And the best I ever got to do was the blocks. What to talk about a gift. And I never just ruined my musical ability. I'm thrown out of it yet. It's terrible how you can mess up a person's life in second grade. Well, came to Liberal High School. Do you know that the only building that's still standing that was there when I was in school has been turned into a church?
That old high school.
The old high school is vacant except for the junior high building, and it's been turned into a church. I started teaching in Liberal in that building, the annex, they called it. And had some best teaching, but it was different. Yes, we used battle. We had very few discipline problems. Well, we did too, because we wore a lot of paddles. Those are a different day and different time. Kids responded differently and probably wouldn't work today at any rate. And my best years were in South Junior High. Moved there in a brand new building, 1964. And I had coached football and wrestling and track and even taught some classes. And those were good years. I can honestly say about teaching in Liberal, I've never dreaded to go to work one single time in that, altogether, for over 30 years I taught essentially. And even in 1974, January of 74, I moved from the junior high to the tech school. And I'd gotten my master's in the meantime, was a counselor at the house. And the counselor's job at the tech school came open, and I had the background in taking the classes, and they hired me. And I've been there, I stayed lots of years as counselor, director of student services, was counselor, financial aid officer, everything except the director. And we had all of the administrative jobs out there in one title. But it was a good job, and I liked it. Changed a lot, you know, they didn't even have tech schools till after Sputnik flew. Remember Sputnik? Russia put a satellite up, and the United States just panicked. We had to get some training for all this stuff. Well, that's the birth of the tech schools came into being. The Liberals was one of the last ones built, tech school, and built it and approved it in '66 and opened the doors in '68. And it served lots and lots of kids in this southwest corner, Kansas and the Oklahoma Panhandle ever since. Talk about job training. That's job training specific. Jobs for area trades, and felt like we have done a good job. We see people that were in that school. When you go to the hospital, you go to Panhandle Eastern, you go to any place where they hire people, and you'll find graduates from that school. It's part of the college, and I think that's a good deal for all of them. I believe in liberal arts training myself. I'm a graduate. It's my basic background is social studies, and I understand the value of the whole package. It is important that people graduate. If they're going to quit short of a degree, they need to at least have a job-specific training so that it leads to the world work. That's what it's all about. I can remember as a kid being told that I need to do well in school in that way. If I do well in school, someday I'll be able to make a living with a pencil instead of shovel. And I like that idea. But it's been a long deal for me. I got my last degree 3 years before I retired. So spent a lot of my time in the classroom myself. And it's been a good trail. My wife and I got married, and we both majored in education. We talked to ourselves. We get a good degree in education, we work anywhere in the world we choose to work. We have friends that went to Japan and taught. We have friends that went and stayed in Italy. Well, I guess we did stay where we wanted to. We've been here Liberal since first job. Spent my years one way or the other with USD 480. Oh, I've had a lot of jobs in the summer, jobs in between school at Wichita, but since I signed a contract with 480, I worked there until I retired. Difference, it didn't exist in the days, in my earliest school days. As a matter of fact, It didn't exist the first 5 or 6 years I taught here in school, but not at the Votech, but when I was teaching the South, I started there in '74 and 68. I started there, we left there in '74, and the technical school started in '68. That much, a lot of time. I guess been good trailhead. A lot of differences. New buildings everywhere you look. There's no old buildings left. So, yeah, there is one. Forgetting that, take that back. Now, McDermott, the first school at McDermott was a 4-room for 4 grades classroom, little square white building. That's still in there, and they've added on to it in every direction. You can't find it hardly, but
If you walk through the schools, you can see where like original structures were and where they built on to some of them.
that's the only one of the original structures still in use.
Is it?
I guess
Toby, you've taught, middle school, high school. Which is your favorite and why? Kids or Votech?
Bring that back, repeat that, please.
In your teaching experience, do you have a preference of which you like teaching better? High school kids, Votech kids, the middle school kids?
I like junior high school kids the best of all, and I'll tell you why. They're the honest, more trouble and all that. But if you got them on your side and you ask them to run their head through that wall, they'll take a try at it. They are energetic, but they can be taught, and they can be about the best all around. It's still cool to do things you ask them to. Later on, it gets where that's not cool. They had no trouble at the Votech school with any kid ever because they were out there because we wanted to be there.
Mm-hmm.
I could take the trouble that the kid would not go to school at the high school or was in trouble all the time in high school. Went out there and they learned to be mechanics or welders or whatever, and they were there because they didn't have to be there. They're there because they wanted to be. It sure makes a difference. Makes it easier for the teacher. It's the hardest job in the world, is try to teach a kid that doesn't want to be there. And you want to improve the school system, that's the whole system. They'll all be smart enough to go off and be doctors and lawyers and whatnot if they want to be there to get that background. It's all in what they want to do. And if they don't want to be there, that teacher can't do much about it. It's going to be more miserable. And I don't know the solution, but sure where the problem lies. It's our school system. It's not the teachers, not the building. It's the want to be there and learn. You take the worst student, if he wants to learn to be an auto mechanic, you let him come down there, he will be there every day and work and mind the teacher. He knows they don't have to be there on what words in their back to high school. At any rate, you asked a good question, a fair question. I had more fun with junior high kids than I ever had again. And I still get more letters now, and Mr. Hale from that, don't even recognize most of them. They've grown out old too now. A lot of those kids are gray and beards, and you don't recognize, but they remember.
Now, Shawna, you were a 5th grade teacher for 10 years, right? Spending 5 years at McKinley, 5 years at Cottonwood, right?
Correct.
Now you're a principal. Differences between the two? What do you see the difference as a teacher and a principal? And obviously, besides the obvious, but do you miss going teaching?
Oh, absolutely, I do miss teaching. I do. I can say that, The role as a principal has evolved and changed. You know, the principal, many times we do a lot of building management. We have, of course, we have the kids that come to us for punishment. But our role has evolved into instructional leaders more now than ever, which puts, you know, the other things are still on our plate, but this is in addition to. And so I do walkthroughs where I go in the classrooms on a regular basis, and I have those discussions with the teachers about actual instruction, and it's not just about the discipline or about the building itself. So I will say there's a lot on our plate, but I enjoy that part of it. That's my own little way of being able to get in the classrooms, and I get to talk to students individually as they're learning, and that's very rewarding. But I definitely miss the classroom and teaching.
How much of an urge do you get back when you're in class? You're doing this wrong. You're doing this wrong.
You know, of all the professional development we've received over the past 7 years since I've been in the position, there's many times I go, God, I just did not teach that right. I wish I could have the chance to go back and do that again. I would do it so differently now because of all that we've learned, things that have changed.
Actually, that's the question. How has it changed actually when you do the walkthroughs, as opposed to in the classroom now as you remember back then?
I think Bridget hit the nail on the head when she said, it was even when we were kids, and even in my first few years as I taught, it was much more desk work. Now worksheets really are a kind of a four-letter word. I mean, worksheets are not something you do. You have the kids interacting with the material they're being taught, hands-on, like I said, technology, but it's not the teacher is doing the majority of the talking, it's the students who are doing the majority of the talking. The percentage for student interaction is much higher, student active participation is much higher than teacher input now, and that has changed over the last 17 years.
Had I been the administrator to the counselor at South, it might not have been much fun.
Oh, I don't know.
And Bridget, this is for you. Okay, 5 years at Hugerton, and how long have you been here teaching?
I've been in Liberal since '99, so I've been here 11 years, 12 years.
Okay. So the difference is, what's the difference that you've seen teaching in Hugerton as teaching here? I mean, obviously smaller town,
Yeah.
Also in terms of your differences as an IRCC teacher too. I mean, how has that changed your perspective as well?
I feel like I had a really rich experience at Hugerton, and I brought a lot of that with me. I had really good administration. I had really good teachers to work with. I enjoyed my experience there so much. I just felt like I just took all that and just, added it on to what I, did at Liberal. But, I spent 3 years out of special ed in Liberal. And even the time that I got out and got back in, there had been some changes. And one of them was, that the inclusion was coming around. And I am a big advocate for that when it's appropriate for the kids. And I just remember spending a year in a classroom, my last year teaching 2nd grade, with a special needs kid in my room all day long with no support. And it was frustrating for me. I was like, I want to meet his needs and I want to meet everybody else's needs, and I can't meet all these needs. I felt like I didn't have as much control. I thought I want to get back to where I have more of that control to make sure those kids do have those supports. And in the classrooms. But the changes I've seen mostly are, in Hugerton, we were still calling it kind of the mainstreaming. But I was going into the classroom a lot more with the kids. So when I went to Liberal, I had to step back about 2 years. Because it was amazing to me, even 30 miles away, how far advanced one town is than another. And what they use as far as, strategies and stuff. So I guess I always kind of felt like when Liberal was starting to implement stuff, I'm like, oh, yep, been there, done that. Okay, I know how to do that. So it was easier for me to, to advocate for it and to implement it. Whereas I think some teachers might have struggled a little more, but I had been exposed to it and I had worked in an environment like that. So it's a little bit easier for me to just kind of flow into it. More natural for me, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Was it being from a smaller, Hugoton being a smaller town, did that sort of, how kind of effect that have, you know?
You mean like coming from a smaller town? Like
Right, like, you know, there are, what, 5,000 maybe? If that.
That difference so much. The only difference that I noticed, it didn't have anything to do with education, was that, you know, my kids can run all over town. And I knew where they were. You know, I knew across town wasn't very far from where we lived, so, you know, if they wanted to run over to the park, that was fine. But here, you don't dare do that. You don't let your kids out of your neighborhood or out of your sight, because, you know, it's just a whole different community. The community over there was a lot more, I guess, close-knit as far as everybody knew everybody. I still think everybody knows everybody here in Louisville. There's a lot more reserve. You know, I don't dare let my kids just run across town. I have a 16-year-old now, and I still make her check in, and I want to know where she's at. But education-wise, I felt like, you know, it was not a lot different for me, really. Class size was about the same. The professional development was different. The professional development part was a change. Because, you know, at Hugoton it was more, you get professional development at the beginning of the year. Here, you're interrupted a lot through the year, getting professional development and those kind of things. In Hugoton it was a little bit different there. In Hugoton, I remember, we were already doing professional learning communities there, and we were doing study groups, and we were doing study books. And then when I came here, I was like, oh my God, you know, I was so excited about it. I thought, oh, you know, maybe they'll have, and it was not even heard of over here. And of course, a few years, when they start bringing it up, I was like, hey, you know, I've done that, and I've seen how they worked, and I enjoyed that aspect of it, with the teachers being able to collaborate with teachers and share ideas from the classrooms. That's the part I probably enjoyed the most.
I got one more quick one, and then you wrap it up. When you guys were teaching, was it just like one teacher per classroom, and not like right now where you're breaking it up into all different over? Because I know growing up, it was just one teacher for me all the way through 6th grade. Was it that for you, and what do you think of that change now?
It is much more of a team effort now, I can tell you. We were very isolated as a teacher in my first few years. And as a student, I had one teacher.
Do you think it's better or worse?
You know, honestly, I think it's better now, just in the fact that we do have our special ed teachers and our regular ed teachers working together as a team to meet the needs of our students. I know when I taught, I did have a partner teacher that we laughed and said we shared the same brain, but we did a lot of planning together and a lot of collaborating together, and we did swap our class, and I taught science to both classes, she taught social studies to both classes. We did a little bit of that, which again, the tag teaming, I think the students got a variety of teaching that way, teaching styles. It broke up their day. And we still have a little bit of that now, but the team effort and the collaboration that happens now enriches the instruction, I think, greatly. We have weekly meetings, weekly collaboration meetings where every teacher at the same grade level meets, sometimes with the special ed teachers, sometimes with the ESL teachers, but they talk about students' data and their instruction and how are we going to meet the needs of every child, and they do that together. It's a team effort.
It's no longer, this is the 2nd grade teacher, this is their class, once that door's shut, it's my class, I do what I need to do with my class until the end of the day, and then my class leaves. It's a lot different.
It is a lot different.
Teachers are given a lot less, I don't want to say control, but, you know, they're all wanting to, and I can see why they do some of the way they do, because if you have a kid that, we have so much transiency with kids. Now, I'm not I don't remember it being that way when I was in school. There's a lot of transiency. Kids even moving from one school to the next in town, or you get kids moving in the middle of the year, moving out in the middle of the year. They're coming from a teacher that taught them something totally different to this new classroom, and now this teacher's teaching reading completely different than what they just learned. That kid's so lost. I think one of the things they're trying to go to, especially in this little area, if kids move from one school to the next, they have a system that goes with them, and the style is more the same. But we have a lot of transiency with our kids.
Toby, anything to add?
I have nothing much to add. My background is completely different than theirs. We're talking about job-specific training for most of my years, and it's still that way. It's changed. Administration, used to be in the Board of Education, now you're under the Regents and blah, blah, blah. But that part, at least, I think is very much the same as it ever was. Most of those students will go to work and instead of get the other year to get an associate degree, or they may not. They've got that option now. They always did have, though, the ability to go get the other half and get an associate degree and get credit for their vocational work. That's not new. So that hasn't changed as much, except it's not pushed as hard by the federal government and supported as well as it used to be. Not the federal government, the state government's in charge of that. But the regions have got bigger things on their mind most of the time. Is that not right?
Pretty much.
Used to go up and take that budget, a man named Dale Dennis, Topeka, and he'd read it over and ask you a few questions and send you home. I don't think it's that simple to get the regions.
Now you basically just wait to see what they give you and go from there, so.